Shut up and sit down.
I am a radical libertarian.
And we don't want the government to do a damn thing.
The current state of politics is unsustainable, politically, economically.
You deserve better.
It is about supporting, platforming, and assisting the people who are out here actually doing the fight.
You just take an issue that's important to you and do something.
There you go.
You are part of that declaration against tyranny.
Because no one brings tear gas to a gunfight.
This conversation gives me a little more hope for the future.
The one, the only.
Fight for liberty. This is the cherry on top.
This is FSM.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Fight for Liberty show. I'm your host, David Fite, here to get you pumped up about some awesome men and women out there making the world a freer place through politics, activism, entrepreneurship, and more. And we are here on the Free Speech Media Network. If you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook, go ahead and find that link in the description. Go over and watch this stream on Rumble. They pay their creators better, and they're less likely to censor us for bringing you the whole story and all of these awesome guests. So go help us out over there. If you've got any show ideas or guests you think that we should interview, or you just want to hang out with the team in our lounge every once in a while, go and join the Discord server. It's also a link in that description. We had the lounge open earlier today, just kind of hanging out while I was writing questions for today's show. So it's a fun time in there, and you should definitely go check it out. I am excited to bring up our guest for today, someone I have had the pleasure of serving in the trenches alongside. But first, we are going to hear from our sponsors of the day. First and foremost, as always, we have the lovely Blood of Tyrants Wine, the official spirit of 1776. Are you looking for a nice night in while sipping on the blood and tears of your enemies and supporting the destruction of the tyrannical state? Look no further than Blood of Tyrants Wine. Choose between a smooth Merlot and a sweet Pinot Grigio, or both. Distributed by activists you know and love, bloodofTyrants.wine is the place to go. Use promo code FSM to get 10% off your first order, or you can kickstart your day with their Energy Tea Liquid Freedom. A healthy yerba mate blend with a nice kick of raspberry will have you refreshed and energized to go out and fight for liberty all day long. All of this is available at bloodofTyrants.wine or drinkbloodofTyrants.com. They both go to the same place. And again, that is promo code FSM to get that 10% off your first order. And if you like what you're seeing, support the channel by checking out our newest sponsor, MyArkit. Save your digital legacy for generations. Don't just save your pictures where they are at risk of being censored, deleted, or lost. MyArkit gives you security and privacy at a great price while telling the whole story in your own voice and writing. Unlike a cloud backup to just dump all of your random pictures, MyArkit has you upload a full memory at a time. A picture or short video post with text and or audio captions create a timeline that makes going through your memories as easy and pleasant experience as possible for you and your loved ones. You can sign up for a 30-day free trial to see what the craze is all about. No payment info necessary. This is actually a free trial. And you can use promo code FSM to get 10% off when you do actually go ahead and pay. And that's going to be at MyArkit.com. That's MyArkit.com. Once again, promo code FSM. You can sign up for a personal account to save your life forever, or if you have an important event coming up, you can create an event account. This will let attendees add photos and videos for you and other admins to go through later and curate a beautiful digital album for your upcoming wedding, convention, graduation, or shower. Go to MyArkit.com to learn more. And again, use that promo code FSM. Joining the show today, we have my former boss and communications director on the Lars Mapstead campaign and founder of Next Level Nonprofits, the one and only Dan Johnson. Welcome to the show. Oh, you are muted.
2024, and I still can't figure out digital tools. And I used to be an IT tech. Millennials are getting to that level of like we're the new, like Gen X can't be boomers because nobody really hates Gen X. They just kind of keep to themselves and drink. Mm-hmm. But millennials are going to be the next boomers, unfortunately.
for sure. We get all the hate for all of the like surrounding generations just kind of aimed at us, just like the boomers do.
Never mind that, like, there's no Gen X in Congress. There's no Gen X even running for office. Gen X is checked out of the world. But because millennials give a crap, we're probably going to get blamed for it.
That is really funny that we've got like millennials running for offices that no Gen Xer holds. This isn't like JD Vance is a millennial, right? He's below that cut.
That's my understanding. Yeah.
We just skipped over that whole. I didn't even think of that. That's great. Well, welcome to the show. It's great to finally get you on here and talk about your project. So let's start off with some background and like testimonial. How did you first hear about libertarianism?
That's a good question. So I think I was at the probably the Ron Paul Fest in Tampa, Florida in 2012. It was like there was, if anybody remembers 2012, there was the Ron Paul Republican rally, which was like Ron Paul as an establishment figurehead rally. And then there was the Ron Paul Fest, which was right next door and put on by all the hardcore Paulies. And I was at Paul Fest, and somebody handed me a flyer or something like that on the Libertarian Party. And Gary Johnson spoke too. And it was just like, okay, these people exist. And then I moved on with my life.
It's so relatable because I also heard of Ron Paul in 2012, and like my like history and politics professor was teacher at like our homeschool co-op. He was a big Ron Paul fan, even though he was like an out and out socialist, which I still find really funny. And he told us all about this dude that's running for president who's super awesome and going to do all this great stuff. And I was like, yeah, that all sounds awesome. And then I was still too young to vote. And my parents were both like, ended up being Romney people. They never really cared about primaries. And so I was just like, yeah, Mitt Romney's awesome. And just completely disregarded Ron Paul and everything about him and kind of forgot who he was for like half a decade. And then joining the Libertarian Party, everybody's, in love with him. And I was like, oh yeah, I remember there's like a bumper sticker on my teacher's car for that guy.
Yeah. So it was that was early on, and then I'd kind of always knew the Libertarian Party or libertarianism was a thing, but it wasn't until 2000 and I want to say 2016, somewhere in there, when I actually got in touch with Kara Scholes, which some people on this call might know. And she reached out to me and she said that she thought that I was one of the top 10 young people who were going to advance liberty in the country. And she wanted to put me in touch with another one of the top 10, which is Spike Cohen. And I was like, okay, let's chat. And was really inspired by her commitment to growing the party and the movement. Met Spike, loved chatting with him. And so I've been around. I'm kind of an OG libertarian in that I've now been speaking at party conventions since 2013, 2014, somewhere in there. But never really considered myself a party member until like summer. I don't know. It all blends together. I have 3 kids. I have 2 kids at this point. See, it's all blends together. I don't even have the 3rd kid yet. I have 2 kids and then 1 on the way. But somewhere in 2014, 2016 is when I talked, or 2016, 2018, talked to Kara and been a little bit more active in the party. And then, of course, with the Lars campaign, dedicated all of my life and then some to the party for like a 8-month span.
Damn, that's quite an endorsement coming in from Kara Schultz, though. Like that's, I definitely would have stuck with a mission if like one of their top people came in and was like, oh hey, I like you, let's bring you in faster, get you.
Well, and honestly, it was her sacrifice that really got my attention, because the Libertarian Party, I think Judd Weiss talked about it. Libertarian Party is this pen that we put all of the most socially awkward people. It's the social awkward holding pen.
Mhm.
And it really has struggled to make all that much of an impact. Kara was telling me on this call that I had with her, she was telling me that she was dying. And she wanted to give, she thought she had about a year to live at that point.
Mhm.
And she wanted to give that to the Libertarian Party. And I was like, whoa, hold on. This is the same party that like just has sexual harassment as part of its MO for women at their events. And either you're into it and you stay, or you're not and you leave. Like, this is the party you want to dedicate your.
We are
your
talking about Kara
life
here.
to.
She's a little interesting.
First councilman I ran into, who the first words out of her mouth when I met her in person was, "This is bullshit."
She's the fucking best.
So like you see someone who makes the case as to why the party is worth dedicating the last year of her life to, and you're like, okay, all right, that makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. And that puts you in touch with Spike Cohen like way earlier than most of us got to know him. I didn't even know who he was. I got to meet him in 2019 and had no idea who the fuck he was. I stood there at a Tulsi Gabbard rally in New Hampshire for almost 10 minutes talking to him. He never mentioned the fact that he was Vermin's running mate. Never told me his name. And I just like had this great conversation with this dude. And then, he got the VP nomination, and it was probably, I think it was a full year later, like after I had met him, somebody shared like Facebook memories of that event, like other people from the Vermin team that I had since befriended. And I saw a picture of him like in the Carhartt jacket and beanie that he was in, freezing his ass off in New Hampshire. And I was like, holy shit, that was the dude that I like hung out with. But had no idea like how much work he had put into the party beforehand. And like, I'm thankful to call him a good friend now. But I think if we were a little bit better at showcasing some of these people to everyone earlier on, it might get them to stick around a little bit longer.
That's entirely possible.
So how did you transition from politics into working with nonprofits?
So in my journey through politics has been on a tear to try and figure out what is the fastest and best lever to pull to make the political system fall to its knees effectively. So, when I first got started, my first organization, some people listening to this might remember it. People Against the NDAA, or PANDA. If you were active at all in the 2012-2014 era, you know that Obama signed this National Defense Authorization Act, which basically said, hey, we can detain you if we think you're a terrorist without a charge, without a trial, forever. And that is the same authority we use to kill and drone strike American citizens abroad, and was argued should be used here. And so that was kind of my introduction to the political space. And I created an organization. We ended up passing legislation on the state and local level to block it. We were frenemies with the 10th Amendment Center on this and had slightly different strategies, but most people in the TAC gotten to know a little bit Michael Bolden, love him, and some of the TAC people. But we did that, and that exploded. I mean, we had right around 10,000 volunteers by the end of 2014. And then I went to Ferguson, and I'll have to tell that story at a later date. But I went to Ferguson, and as I was being escorted off the parking lot by National Guard, I realized that maybe just passing laws wasn't going to stop this kind of thing from happening in the country. And ended up starting an activist training center, the Solutions Institute. That led to the Heart of the Beast, which was a tax reform org. And I was running this tax reform org called the Tax Revolution Institute. And we were looking at ways to kind of simplify the tax code. And we found that, well, the easiest way to simplify it is just to allow people to opt out. Because that's why when you go to donate money to a nonprofit or you go to pay online, it's like, click, 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 you're done. And your federal form is 1,600 pages and you need to hire somebody to do it. So you can't opt out. And we're like, we're looking at ways for you to opt out. That's what started me looking at community organizations. And in trying to give you a decade-long transition in like 90 seconds, the real moment at which everything changed was because we were looking at community organizations as an alternative where people could theoretically direct some of their tax dollars to. We ended up looking at the Cajun Navy. And you may recognize, or some of your listeners may recognize, the Cajun Navy from their work during Hurricane Harvey, where they rescued more people with like $100,000, rescued more people than FEMA did with its multi-billion dollar, or the Coast Guard did with its multi-billion dollar budget. And I was asked by somebody who was in the Cajun Navy if I wanted to listen in on their emergency line, since we were looking into this org. And they said, sure, you can listen in on the emergency line. Or, you know, I said, sure, let's listen on the emergency line. And there was a moment on that line, and everybody's talking about the different people they're rescuing and, you know, where they're at and, you know, what they're coming in with. And there's a moment where a voice crackles on the line and they say, we've got a 3-year-old hanging on a branch at the corner of such and such. We can't get to him. Our boat's full. We need somebody to get over here, like right now. And this is downtown Houston. It's totally flooded. This kid needs to not drop. And there's dead silence on the line for like probably 2 minutes. Very, very active line, but just dead silent. And then a boat somebody crackles on the line. We got him. He's in the boat. We got him. And everybody breathes. And you realize that although the bigger fights matter, the smaller fights is where the change is and where it starts. And I ended up joining the social media team for Cajun Navy, where we would literally, people would be posting their addresses on the social media network formerly known as Twitter. And we would punch them. We would ask them for their phone number of the person who needs to be rescued, submit an IT ticket to the Cajun Navy with this person's information and like how high the water is in their house and stuff like that. And then you'd get a tweet from this person saying, you just rescued my grandma. A boat showed up to get her 30 minutes ago. Or, you know, my family was drowning and now they're not because you guys sent out a boat. And like for 3 days, it was just nonstop for that in Houston. And it was at that moment that I kind of realized that policy does matter. It does. But the majority of what policy and government and business can solve has effectively already been solved. If you were to look at, you know, most libertarians I know, they want to make a difference. That's why they're doing this. They see something in their community, they care about it deeply. They see, you know, a no-knock raid on a drug user. They see some sort of violation of the government. And they go right uphill and go try to take on the government for doing that. And I'm not saying that that's not necessary. If nobody's going to go up the hill and take on the government, well, it's just going to run roughshod over literally everything. And that's why I'm glad for organizations like You're the Power and stuff like that. But if we're looking at a long-term solution, a big reason the drug war is still going on is because people think that the only way to handle that is to have the government do it. They're concerned about the negative impacts of drug use on children, community, etc. And they think the government is the only entity that can stop that. The reason why we have some of the most massive farm subsidies in the world is because people believe that if government does not fund that, then it won't get done. The reason why Trump is advocating for all of these Buy American and stuff like that is because people believe that you can't have there's no government transition program that will work, and therefore there's nothing that will work.
Yeah.
Right now, the issues that we fight over as a country, they're issues that charities are uniquely positioned to solve. They're issues that have two key aspects. One, they are people who cannot afford a free market solution to that issue. Right?
Yeah.
So if you look at healthcare, the healthcare is screwed up for lots of reasons. It's been screwed up a long time. But the reason healthcare is screwed up is because there were people who couldn't afford the for-profit solution. and the only answer that was provided was a public solution, a government solution. Yeah. The reason why the Department of Education exists is because there was a lot of people in the country who realized, hey, we excluded Black Americans from school, and we need to make that right. So they decided the way to make that right was to have a federal Department of Education and federal standards, so the schools aren't excluding Black Americans anymore, thinking that the old institution of the government is the only way to solve this. So number one, they are people who cannot afford the free market option. That's number one. Number two, they are in a situation that cannot be solved by requiring them to do something. And the vast majority of situations that we fight over in America today fit both of those two.
Yeah.
And who can address that? It's charities. It's nonprofits. It is organizations that are specifically set up to target a specific issue for people who cannot afford what the market offers on that issue and help them get from point A to point B on that.
Yeah.
And that's why not only have since that point with the Cajun Navy, I've basically dedicated both my political career and my personal career to helping get data and information on the impact of nonprofits, and to eventually now what I have with Next Level is recognizing that even people who run nonprofits don't get this, that they're in this position to make a generational change in this country.
Yeah.
To actually helping people start up nonprofits that are sustainable, that do make an impact, that do actually solve the problems that we're faced with. That's why I kind of shifted from big policy, and I got resolutions in my drawer somewhere of like, finally got these government officials to say we're right. But saying you're right doesn't do anything for the drug addict. Saying you're right doesn't do anything for the seniors who would be eating cat food in some of the communities in Tampa, if not for Good Neighbors, one of my earliest clients. It does nothing for homeschool families who are trying to take their kids out of the system, but don't know how to deal with their mental health issues, and psychologists won't help them. Like the Homeschool Counseling Network does. It does nothing to actually address the problem. It has a bunch of people in a room with suits and ties on, applauding themselves for taking a strong moral stance against homelessness, against drug, issues, whatever it is. The vast majority of policy, because it's not connected to that community, it's pointless. And so unless you are playing aggressive defense or you are building the solutions of tomorrow, I don't know why you're in politics.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. There's definitely, I think we all kind of go through that phase of like bright-eyed, bushy-tailed libertarian who thinks that, you know, if we just say the right things to the right people, that everyone's just gonna wake up and you know, we're gonna abolish all these federal agencies and shrink the government and all of this stuff. But to your earlier point, I don't think that actually does any good until we change the mindset of the people who believe that government is the only solution, which is currently by far the majority of America, more than that votes either way together. You know, like there's still a good,
probably more so than at any point in American history. Honestly, both the right
Mhm.
and the left believe that government is the only solution.
Yeah, and a good chunk of those that stay out of it still. I know a lot of people that stay out of it partially because they don't believe in government and politics, but also a little bit because it's just like, well, they've got it. Like they'll do whatever. My little voice doesn't matter. Uh, they'll figure it out, whatever needs to be figured out. And you know, they're all still in that exact same headspace that you're talking about. And I think that's another issue that charities and nonprofits are uniquely set up to address. I very much detest people that use political campaigns and political parties as like educational organizations, because there's way too much paperwork and bullshit involved to just not to say that there's none involved in a nonprofit, but there's so much less. Like, let's be real. It is so much easier to run a company or a nonprofit than it is a political party. And it also has so many less strings attached. It doesn't have the, I can't support you because I already support this other thing that we find a huge problem with in politics. Like, one of the reasons I love You Are the Power is because I can go up to a like Republican county board member and say, hey, we've got this issue with this family. And because we don't have the word libertarian in our organization at all, we're not a political thing. None of us are running for office or anything like that. Like there's no reason for them to not help us. It's it makes them look good. It's something they believe in anyway. You know, we're just a concerned citizen with the backing of a decent nonprofit. It's not an opponent, which anything coming out of the LP should be seen as, or at least we kind of hope it's seen as an opponent. Otherwise, they just don't make us legitimate at all.
Well, and frankly, if you are in the LP, and I'm a long time, party member, I've got a Facebook thing that's like always a libertarian. I do think that you do need political solutions eventually in some places, because otherwise all the solutions are going to be statist ones and they're going to jam them down your throat and that's it. But in order to have solid political solutions, you've got to have proof that your solutions actually work. And you're only going to get so far as a third party. As the people in power, you can BS your way to power all the time. Everybody knows that. But as a third party, as the outsiders, what is it Elon Musk said about products? He said, if you're going to enter an established industry, your product needs to be 6 times better. The product itself needs to be 6 times better than anything that's already out there. Mm-hmm. And he's right. And it's the same thing for politics. You actually have to have a better product. You can't just do what the Republicans and Democrats do. So if you're inside of the Libertarian Party and you're focused primarily on libertarian politics, I would put forth this challenge to you that is very related to what I do. But I put forth this challenge to you. The Democrats and Republicans have full culture visions for where they're going. The Democrats have a world based on equality that is accepting of people of various different, personal stripes, that takes care of the people at the bottom through government programs, that restricts the people at the top from having too much power through transparency and accountability. You can imagine what a liberal democratic society looks like pretty easily. It's walking down the streets of San Francisco. which is not always a good thing. But you can imagine what that society looks like. They have a full view of society, a full vision of society. Republicans also have a full vision of society. It is much more regimented. It's much more individualistic. It's much more self-reliant of a society. But you can experience that society in a lot of rural America. That's what their society, it's intolerant in a lot of ways, but that's what their society is like. So when you join the Republican Party or you join the Democrat Party, you have a clear vision of what not just the policies are, but the future is. How do they actually solve different problems in this society? You have an idea. And what libertarians have tried to do for the longest time, they've tried to say, our only stance is political. Was it, I owe you only non-aggression. No, actually, you owe more than that.
Yeah.
And what that means is, and my challenge is, that if you're going to advance liberty, that you have to think about this in three different places. You have to think about it, what does the government look like? You have to think about it in what does business and the market look like? And you have to think about it in what do we do for people who aren't served by either? And if libertarians are not out there saying, in a libertarian society, we have these charities, we have these nonprofits, we have these organizations that because we have so few restrictions, they're able to go out and do their work. You know, nonprofits today, if you want to start a nonprofit, you have to wait in order to do the paperwork, just the paperwork they require. You have to wait roughly between 6 and 18 months in most cases. I have a faster way, but in general, it's like 6 to 18 months to start helping people officially. You have to have a board of directors that you share power and responsibility with across the nonprofit just to start helping people. You have all of these restrictions in the ability to just go out and help people in a more libertarian society. That's there. And when people accuse libertarians, you don't have empathy. You don't listen. You're not thinking about, you know, you hate poor people. What they're saying is you have 2 pieces of a 3-piece pie, and you're never talking about the third piece other than, you know, gun.
And we're actively trying to get rid of one of the other pieces.
And actively trying to get rid of one of the other pieces. If you're going to start putting forth a vision, I think you need to start including effective nonprofits and charities in that vision as a libertarian. And if you don't start doing that, I think you will continually lose ground, because that is the battleground that the Republicans and Democrats are saying government will fix, and libertarians don't have another answer.
Yeah, totally. I'm gonna it's pretty on topic, like a little bit of a spinoff, because one of the things that grinds my gears more than anything else is the roads conversation, right? Like, obviously I have been a libertarian long enough to be, I literally have a little keychain that looks like a road sign. It says road. So I get it. I get how stupid the argument sounds sometimes and how often we get it. But the way that we just throw people into the wind for asking it is completely ridiculous, because it is a legitimate question that almost all of us asked at some point in time. You have to solve that logical issue that people are going to have when you say, this entity that has, for the most part, taken care of all of the road creation in the country for the last few decades, we're going to get rid of them and privatize it. How? There needs to be a how. And most libertarians are not incapable, but completely unwilling to provide that how to someone, because they see it as just like a stupid question. But we need to have a little bit more of that empathy, like you're talking about, and understand that without providing those hows, we're not actually going to win anybody over to the ideology. You can't just be, oh, charities will solve it. How? You're gonna have, if you can bring somebody over into libertarianism without any of those hows, they're fucking stupid. They're not gonna last long in the ideology, and they're not exactly a great asset, because they're just will go with anything on a whim, because it is kind of a crazy ideology to be smacked in the face with somebody that's born in this century, at least, or the second half of the last one. That we, like you said, most of us expect government to solve almost every problem. When you try to just take away all of those solutions at once, like I said, like if someone doesn't ask you how, then they're just not worth talking to at that point. Like, what do you like? Those people are not going to be out there championing your ideology anytime soon. But again, like you're saying, like nonprofits really do have a unique way of answering so many of these questions, and the idea is to actually have some of them operational and functional beforehand, to actually prove, like you said, like you need a proof of work and
that's where nonprofits kind of have failed. So if you think about I'm trying to think of the book name, but it's like World History in 900 pages or something like that. If you were to do an abridged history, thank you, Brian. Hello, Brian. If you were to do an abridged history of the world, it would kind of look like this. First, there was chaos. And people kind of were these rabid animals who fought each other over whatever. And they had done that enough and you had like mini tyrants kind of everywhere. And they'd done that enough that eventually they created this institution called government. And the idea of government was we're all going to have a specific set of rules passed down by the king usually, but a specific set of rules that we all agree on, so that I know when I'm walking down the street, I'm not going to get stabbed in the face. And then government got to the point where it couldn't solve everything, and it started to become a lot more problems than it solved. And we had the market. Both government, the use of force, and the market existed before they became institutions. But at a certain point, we went, well, we really need some prosperity in here, and government's not providing that very well. So we have the institution of the market. And for the longest time, people have been compassionately taking care of each other, have been addressing their neighbors' needs, whether through the church or whether through their local community. The longest time have been doing that. But it's not become the institution. It's the nonprofits and charities space is still kind of a baby space. And that's the challenge for nonprofits, is they're the answer, but they also have to live up to that answer. And so far, a lot of nonprofits have been, they've been struggling to live up to that answer because they struggle to deliver an impact. They struggle to run like a professional operation. They view themselves, and other people view them, as the dumping place for their garbage they don't want to do. Oh, we'll take your extra whatever. We'll take your extra this. We'll take your extra that. Oh, this is garbage. I was going to throw it away. Let's give it to the thrift store. For the longest time, that's what nonprofits in this country have been. Now, there are exceptions to that rule. But my kind of challenge to libertarians who are not as involved in the party system is, can you live your values and go change that? Right. In 2018, after my first nonprofit, third nonprofit kind of blew up in my face because I made some bad decisions. I was living in a shed, and it was a insulated shed, so that was a plus, but not the best living arrangements. And I had been an activist at that point for about 8 or 9 years, and dedicated my life, gave up social time, gave up any semblance of friends outside of my activist work, like was all in. And I looked back at what I had successfully been able to do, and it was lots of pieces of paper from people in business suits who, would never actually do what they said on the piece of paper, but it's signed, man.
Right.
There's a few things that we did, but like in general, that was the result. And we kicked off a little nonprofit accelerator program at We Do Better. And I had a lady reach out, and she wanted to be in the accelerator program, but it was full. So I'm like, I guess I will charge you money. I will charge you $15 an hour, which is a ridiculous rate, but you got to start somewhere. Charge you $15 an hour to help you turn this, like, giving people food out of fridges in your garage into a actual nonprofit.
Mm-hmm.
And we just did the numbers. So that was 2018. So 6 years, 2024. We just did the numbers. That organization, which is now Good Neighbors, last year served 3.25 million meals to people in the Tampa area, which means that every month there's 15,000 people, probably closer to 30,000, but we only know for sure it's 15. There's 15,000 people in a county outside of Tampa, 15% of the food insecure population, that is receiving food that otherwise wouldn't. That we hear stories about, this elderly lady was eating cat food because she couldn't afford food at the end of the month. And she almost died doing that. But our giveaway showed up, and she didn't show up at the giveaway. And the manager went to her house and realized that was the situation she was in, and got her the food that she needed. So in 6 years and I didn't dedicate my entire life to Good Neighbors. I dedicated like 2 or 3 hours a week to it. In 6 years, that organization now keeps 15 to 20,000 people from not having a meal. And
that's
in
incredible.
8 years, I had like things hanging on my wall in activism. So the impact that has been able to be made by the organizations that are actually going out and solving the problem, which is harder than just getting a bunch of people in a room to agree it should be solved. Just difficult to even talk about.
Yeah. So we got a little bit of a sneak peek there, but tell me a little bit more about Next Level Nonprofits as its own thing and what you guys are doing over there.
So I started Next Level because I saw all these nonprofits when we were doing impact evaluations. I saw all these nonprofits that were operating but were not making a significant impact, and weren't even measuring their impact. And ever since I've been on this tear to help address some of the problems that I thought would be addressed through politics, through the nonprofit and charity space, this was kind of the logical next step. So I launched Next Level almost 2 years ago at this point. And what we do is we help business owners and professionals, because those are the people who are actually serious about creating a real nonprofit. We help businesses and professionals launch and create sustainable organizations. So all the questions that people have about the paperwork, all the concerns people have about setting up the right structure, if they're going to do something serious, all of that, we do the paperwork for them, and we walk them through how to run it in the first 4 weeks. And then after that, we help them create a sustainable organization. And that means getting their vision clear, getting a star team working around them and helping them, getting the funding they need for their programs and operations, making a measurable impact on people and people's lives, and then circling all around, telling everybody that you did that, raising a whole bunch more money, and doing it all over again, so that you have nonprofits that run professionally, that operate kind of like businesses, that can get to the level of significant impact. Instead of just telling people to do it, as I was doing through the Institute, now I'm actually helping people do that.
Hell yeah. I want to circle back to just a piece of that and talk about the like measurable impact as kind of your first thing. What do you mean by that? Give people a little bit. I'm gonna make you give out like a little bit of what you do for free here. But
That's
like,
fine.
how do we actually make it doable and measurable?
So if there's one thing that government's good at doing, it's pretending that they have impact, but measuring the hell out of what they pretend they have. Anybody who's ever applied for government funding knows that they have these kind of metrics of what they want to achieve all the time, completely disconnected from what's going on the ground or what actually needs to happen. Such as, here's how much milk somebody needs to drink if they're getting free school lunches. And then you just end up dumping out hundreds of gallons of milk because not everybody actually wants to drink that much milk. Government's been doing the whole measure thing without the impact thing. And nonprofits have been doing the impact thing without the measure thing. Measurable impact is saying, okay, if you're a nonprofit, you have a vision of where people get. I'll use Good Neighbors as an example. Good Neighbors' vision is that people have access to the food and necessities that they need in their community. Okay, fairly broad vision. But looking at the food, it's asking yourself, all right, how will we know if people have access to this? And what do we do to measure that? So what we did with Good Neighbors is we identified access is actually a real pain because access is such a broad word, but access is what they wanted. Their vision is not everybody gets charitable food and is on the dole. Their vision is you screw up, you're in a bad situation, or you have a disability, or you're in some situation you can't actually help yourself. You can get food. That's their vision. Okay, right. How do you measure that? Well, we broke down access into 5 pieces. One is distance. You have to have food within a certain distance of you so you can actually reach it. 2 is there has to be an amount of food that is actually sufficient for you for whatever period of time. There has to be nutritious. There has to be a certain variety of food so that you're not just getting scurvy. And you have, let's see, amount, nutritious, variety, and there was like 1 or 2 others. Transportation access, I think, was one of them. And all you do is you take a couple hours and you figure out what those are, and then you measure them. And you add on to that the qualitative, which is you actually talk to people about how did this help them. So measurable impact is person, not an output. An output, for those who don't know nonprofits, outputs versus impacts. Outputs are we gave away X amount of meals. Impact is everybody had access to those meals in this certain area. Impact, output is we gave a bunch of clean needles out to drug users. Impact is when surveyed, those drug users no longer use drugs. Or like when we tested their blood, they no longer use drugs. That's impact. And so it's not up to me or a central planner or the government or anything like that to come in and say, this is what impact should be. It is up to nonprofits to start actually measuring that. And if you're a nonprofit that has been primarily relying on heartstrings, because most nonprofits do, look at this, sad story of this person, and you really want to help them. Donors are getting smarter, as they should. Yeah. And the expectations are rising. So you have to go from just heartstrings, which are important. Got to have empathy and that to get people paying attention. But have to go from just heartstrings to what are we actually doing, though? Because if you are not delivering an impact as a nonprofit, you don't deserve to exist. If you are not delivering a profit as a for-profit company, you don't deserve to exist. If you're a government and everybody in your jurisdiction is dying randomly, you are not protecting people as your sole function. Right. You don't deserve to exist. And so that measurable impact is about just identifying how quickly and how many can we move from point A to point B. So we're actually helping people with this money instead of just making ourselves feel better.
Mm-hmm. That is extremely important because I think, like you said, donors are definitely getting smarter. I think part of that is because the classics that you used to be able to really trust have kind of gone by the wayside. I can't count. I have seen more posts on social media about why I shouldn't donate to the Salvation Army than I have actually seen Red Kettles this year. Just whether it's people that dislike their religious roots or don't like where the money's going or think that there's too much bureaucracy in the organization, that not enough of the money actually goes to good things. There's plenty of critiques to be had, but even more so of like ASPCA or the Humane Society or so many of these other organizations that people had been donating to for decades thinking that they were helping, and then they realized that all they did was buy somebody their fourth house and maybe actually kill a bunch of puppies instead of actually save any. They get a lot of people have a bad taste in their mouth now. The people who do have the money and the stability to really be donating and helping these nonprofits got screwed over so much. And I'm seeing the same thing kind of in politics, trying to fundraise for politics this past cycle. A lot of people are just like, no, I'm good. You're just going to waste my money. So if you can actually show them, like you're saying, not just a feel-good story that anyone, even PETA can put out some feel-good stories while they're murdering dogs. You got to actually show people, no, we're saving dogs. This is how many dogs actually got saved. And I think it's very important.
And to the donor perspective there, there's this thing that's gone around for a long time, and it's one of the criticisms of Salvation Army I don't like, as opposed to the ones that I really do. From a donor perspective, the Salvation Army doesn't often put out, their stories of impact. They are one of those legacy charities that relies very much on heartstrings. But if you are going to deliver a significant impact, you need overhead. And there's this overhead myth out there, which is another criticism of the Salvation Army, which is like, well, 87 cents out of every dollar actually goes to helping people, because everybody's thinking with this scarcity mindset. Charities are the place I go and throw my garbage. I want them to be 100% efficient with the change that I gave them, because I don't really think about what the impact is going to be. If you are delivering impact as a nonprofit, it doesn't matter if you have to pay somebody $200,000 because you need a therapist who's actually good at what they do to help a woman out of a human trafficking situation so that she can actually integrate back into society and actually go forward from there. It doesn't really matter as long as you're delivering that impact. But if you're not delivering that impact, then all everyone is rightly going to be focused on is, what is the cost? What is the cost? You bought this guy a new house. You did this for the charity leader. Look, I think, this is a controversial opinion, I'm sure, but I think that if you're the head of the Cajun Navy, you should have a mansion twice the size of the union leader who was holding up all of the stuff at the ports, because you're making the kind of impact that our society is supposed to be about moving forward. And so part of the way that you as a charity, if you run a nonprofit, part of the way you get people to start giving you serious money, show impact. Because then the rest of it is kind of just like if a for-profit company is making a profit, nobody's like, well, how much did they pay to cashier? Or the CEO was paid, X amount of money. No, they're making a profit. That's what they want. When nonprofits are making an impact, they can be professionals, and then the criticism is less, how much did you pay your people, and more where it should be, which is, but what did you actually accomplish with that money?
Yeah. I think that there's a medium to be found there, because I've seen quite a few startups and nonprofits and various organizations go too far in the, ethical money spending way, where they don't build up that overhead. They don't invest in themselves. They keep doing it as like a hobby because they feel bad taking a paycheck from their nonprofit. And they end up driving themselves into the ground because they don't have anything actually built under them. They're just redistributing everything that they get back into the community. They do a lot of change, but for a year or two, and then they burn out. So I firmly agree that you can't go too far that way. There's also a too far the other way, I think, where some of the criticism, I don't actually think, to your point, I don't think the Salvation Army is one of the ones that deserves as much hate, because it is close to like 70 cents on the dollar or something. ASPCA is 7 cents on the dollar, actually goes to something that's too low. If your CEO is making tens of millions of dollars and you're spending very little of what you get on anything else, and most of it's going to Sarah McLaughlin's fucking residuals, which is a crazy expenditure that they have. The numbers, I used to sell do street fundraising for the Humane Society, so we learned a lot of dirt on the ASPCA. And like, it's crazy how little they actually spend on what they say they do. And so I think that there's definitely a too far in that direction, where there's some valid criticism there. And I think so many people are too worried about being that, or like BLM or some of these other organizations that we hear these horrible stories about, that they end up screwing themselves and the people they're trying to help by not actually building up that infrastructure. And yeah, like $200,000 a year for a therapist is like a normal price. If you're paying, just an administrative somebody millions of dollars, then that's a different story. And maybe you should reevaluate yourself.
Well, and that's very true. And what are the common complaints you hear from nonprofit leaders? I don't have enough time. Constantly working on this. I'm putting in everything. I don't have enough time. I don't have enough help. I'm the one who has all this stuff on my plate. Nobody knows we exist. It's a real common one. We're the best kept secret in our community. What are those things? Their overhead. You invested so much time in helping the people in front of you that you didn't invest enough time in getting the organizational infrastructure and the sustainability and the help you need, so that when you burn out, it's over. That is how the majority of nonprofits die, is the founder burns out. Founder puts in that effort and goes out, and they burn out. And if you burn out and it's over, you don't have a sustainable nonprofit. If you burn out and it's over, that vision you have in your head of all the people that you're looking to help and all the people that you're going out there to make a difference with, it dies after 1 or 2 years. It dies after 3 years. That's it. You can only keep it going so long. But if you recognize that, even in the example, I do think there is a certain point where you go too far, but it's no different than any business or anything like that. Like at a certain point, even investors in a for-profit company would be like, why did you spend $400 million on the stuffed pig at the company retreat? Like, what the hell? That would exist. That exists with nonprofits too. But nonprofits have adopted this ethos of it's somehow better if I'm doing it for free. Let me ask this question. If you do it for free, can you make the impact that you want to make? And if you can't, it's not better doing it for free. In fact, you're screwing over all of these people who you could help, because you have to be, this is not how they would say it, that you have to be morally better than everyone else in doing it for free. You have to be acknowledged for your charity. I'd rather be acknowledged for my impact than my charity.
Yeah, that's 100% fair. I think what you kind of touched on there is like an age-old sales problem that I've never really applied to this situation, but the way you just said it, it kind of clicked, of the, helping the people in front of you and not building up the infrastructure, is it's the same problem as, focusing on the deals in your pipeline and not cold calling. Because then they either close or they don't close, and then you have nothing. And then you're just cold calling with no results. And you're going to burn out in a week of that. I've seen that with so many call centers. And it's such a consistent problem that salespeople will have, where because when there's somebody that's actually answering your phone call and you're building this rapport with, and there's a deal going down, it just feels so much better than cold calling. And you'd much rather answer calls than make calls. But you are going to fuck yourself. And it's the same with this, as far as, like you said, just focusing on what's in front of you and not building up that infrastructure. What if you help those 7 people that actually know about you? they're done. You've helped them.
And you have such a huge advantage as a nonprofit leader over a for-profit in that you have volunteers. So with a nonprofit, you can build a team. You can build an infrastructure before a for-profit could think about it. Because in order to build an infrastructure for most for-profits, at least the ones I know of, you have to hire people. In order to hire people, you have to have money. But from the get-go, from the jump, you can bring in volunteers and you can design a team that puts you in a good infrastructure position to help more people. So, and it's wild to see nonprofit leaders not take advantage of that kind of natural advantage they have over businesses and build that volunteer team up as soon as they can, so that you have more infrastructure and so that you can do all the things you need to do to go raise money and to go out and engage in your community.
Yeah. What are some of the biggest struggles you have seen nonprofits have getting off the ground?
So the struggles come in 5 phases. These are the 5 phases of my soon-to-be trademarked sustainable impact method. These are the 5 phases that new nonprofit leaders struggle with. The first phase is paperwork. They struggle to get started. They struggle to actually get off the ground. What do you need? Who do you file with? What are the restrictions on a nonprofit? Getting in legal trouble with the IRS is something that will hold a lot of people back from doing a lot of things, and nonprofits is definitely one of them. So the first thing is they just don't know the paperwork, and they don't know what legal protections they need. They just don't have that technical knowledge. The second is vision. With a for-profit, you go out and you serve people. You're like, you have this problem, I'm going to go serve this problem. And with a nonprofit, you actually have a vision of where you want to go. You have a vision of change that you want to see. And in a for-profit, you rarely ever, until you get to like 10, 15, 30 employees, you rarely ever have to articulate your vision for the company. It's just like, we do this. What do you do? Well, we, serve these tax, help people with taxes. We do this, we do that. It's all about what you do because that's all the customer cares about. But from a nonprofit, from the jump, you're getting investors. What do investors care about? Where are we going? What's the vision of this? What is actually happening here? And they're not even like investors who are going to make money off of it. They're investors who are going to make an impact, all of which is only defined by your vision. And so they really get stuck on articulating that vision of the future, the people that you're serving, or the minds that you're changing. What does it look like when you actually succeeded? Can you articulate that in 3, in 5, in 10 minutes? Because if you can't, what makes your approach more likely to deliver this than somebody else's?
Right.
You got to be able to articulate that very quickly. And that's a really, and it also is not just an articulation thing, but it's like your team doesn't know what to do if they don't know what your vision is. They can't operate independently of you. They've always got to follow whatever you tell them to do. Your organization will pick up opportunities that are completely unrelated to why you started it if you do not have a very clearly articulable vision, because that is your profit and loss. As a nonprofit, the closer you get to your vision, the more of a profit you're making. The further away you are from your vision, the less of a profit you are making. It is your P&L statement. So number 2, that's where they get stuck. Number 3 is team. So you get your paperwork, you have a clear vision, and you get like your brother and your aunt as your board members. And then you just go out and help people. And then inevitably, a month later, you complain about the fact that your brother and your aunt are not actually helping with your nonprofit. Guess what?
Yep.
They're not your team. They're the people you put on so you can get the paperwork done. And you have to put in, and different teams will look different depending on what your connections are as a person. But you have to put together your advisory board, your board, your team members in different areas that you're not strong in. You really should have a team of like 5 to 10 people, active people, before you even do anything. So number 3 is they get stuck on team, and this is the thing that a lot of them will burn out on. Number 4 is funding. Is they don't go raise money first.
Yes.
When you're doing nonprofit work, you have a 2-phase growth cycle. Whereas when you're doing for-profit work, you have a 1-phase growth cycle. The 1-phase growth cycle for for-profits is get new client. Get new client, get new client, get new client, get new client. That is the 1-phase growth cycle for for-profits, is get new client.
Yep.
But because a new client means more money, which you then spend to get new clients, which means more money, which you spend to get new clients and build infrastructure and do all the things you're doing, right? 1-phase growth cycle. I'm sure there's business owners who disagree it's 1 phase, but for the sake of argument, it's a 1-phase growth cycle. If you're a nonprofit, you have a 2-phase growth cycle. Get funding, make impact, go get more funding, make impact, go get more funding. Why? Because every new client that you get is less money. It's not more money. You do not gain money by helping people. You lose money by helping people. So you have to go get the money to go help people, to go get the money to go help people, right? Yep. And most nonprofits start at help people, because that's what the founders want to do. And they don't want to fundraise. They're like, ew, fundraising. I don't want to ask people for money. Who wants to ask people for money? And I'll give the answer. We had a convening a couple nights ago, where we brought in 3 of the top fundraising experts to come on to a Zoom call. We had like 30 nonprofit founders on there. And I was just like, pepper them with questions. And one of the questions was, how do you overcome the fear of fundraising? Very common question. Mm-hmm. And there were lots of good answers about how to overcome the fear of fundraising. Mine was, if you're not going to fundraise for your nonprofit as the executive director, quit. I didn't want to fundraise when I got into nonprofits at all.
Yeah.
But
I hate it.
When you go fundraise, when people think, oh, I'm going to hire somebody to go fundraise for me. I'm going to pay them a commission of the amount of money they raise. So no risk. They just go and make money and bring it back, and I pay them half of it. Like, perfect. Just commission for salespeople. But when the donor talks to that person, they're going to ask, when can I talk to the executive director? Because you have the stories. You started the nonprofit, and they want to be there with you. They want to emotionally be seeing the problems you see and the challenges that you see. You have to raise money as a nonprofit leader. And the second reason you have to raise money as a nonprofit leader is if you're going to make an impact, other than just the fact they need to see you. If you're going to make an impact, you have to make the kind of impact that people will fund. 2-phase cycle. If you go out and make an impact and then come back and ask for money, you don't know if that's the kind of impact people will fund, and that kind of impact is not sustainable.
Yeah.
But if you go raise money on the promise that we're going to make such an impact by such and such a day, one of the keys to any nonprofit getting started is impact project. Not a program, not this is what we do with my nonprofit, not this is who we help, none of that nonsense. Impact project. By this day, we're going to do this thing for these people, which is going to impact them in this way. The timeline with a specific amount. You go to donors with that, and you know whether your offer, using a for-profit term, you know whether your offer is any good. So that fourth phase, people skip the fourth phase. They don't get stuck on it. They just skip it. Is funding. You have to get funding for your idea before you go out and help people. If you can't, your idea is not good enough or your circle's not good enough, it's just going to fail. And then finally is measurable impact, as we talked about ad nauseum on this show already. So many nonprofits are like, I'm just going to go out and help people, right? Yeah. So even if they do the first 4 phases and they get the funding and they go out and help people, but they don't actually measure what worked with that. They don't actually know what worked. And we should know if it worked. Then all of the donors they got, they're going to lose, because the donors are going to expect, oh, well, if this worked, then it's going to work again, then it's going to work again. And all these expectations are built up. But you have just this one program that you're proceeding on without innovating, without trying to figure out how do we actually make an impact here? Or probably even more common, you have such a big idea of what you want to do that you won't get to the impact fast enough to keep everyone around.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll just bleed out as an organization because you've got the people, you've got the money, you've got the backing and the support, you've got the vision, but it's taking you so long to get and deliver that first impact that by the time you deliver it, everybody's like, man, do I really want to be here anymore? So those things, and then all you do to make it sustainable is you repeat the cycle. Nonprofits will raise more money than they ever have when they return from that impact project. And they're like, look at, it can be small. It can fail. I have a client, not going to name him. I have a client whose impact project failed because they didn't figure out the budget side well. And they went to donors. They're going to donors after that impact project fails. And these people are handing them gobs of money. Why? Because they learned something from that failure, and they're applying it in a different way to make that impact. They're getting gobs of money. But the vast majority of your money as a nonprofit will show up after you get to the end of that cycle and then report that to your donors and your team and the media and whatever. And the money will flood in. You report that and say, this is what we're doing next. And then the money floods in. And that cycle is how you create a sustainable organization. You repeat that cycle, and then you go back and you talk about the vision. You don't repeat the paperwork, hopefully, but you go back and you talk about the vision, and you add more people to your team, and you raise more money, and you go out and you make an impact, and then you spin off a program that does the same thing, whatever. But those 5 phases, that's the cycle you master as a nonprofit. You master that cycle, you're sustainable. You don't master that cycle, you break at any point in that cycle, and the nonprofit will it'll either bleed out or blow up. And neither of which is particularly helpful.
Right. I'm gonna try to be as vague as possible with this story so I don't out anyone. But a good kind of example about the measurable impact thing, as you said, we've talked about it a little bit ad nauseum, but I'm just gonna try to hammer it home here. Because you're talking about is the work the kind of thing that people actually want to donate to in the fundraising section, and you need to make sure that not only is the work something that people want to donate to, but the impact that you can measure by that work is something people will feel good about, in that return. Because I work with an organization that, was doing the work, got some funding, was doing the work that they said that they were going to do, but then the donors didn't really feel the impact that they were hoping to see, because what they wanted out of the organization wasn't just a bunch of boxes checked of the work. They wanted to see an actual like cultural shift out of this organization and people really believing in it. And they weren't able to really show that when they went back to them with like, here's all the people we helped. And that's like, okay, cool. Maybe these 7 people now really believe in your organization. I want to see thousands of people's minds changed by what you do. And so we launched a like resolution project where we got tens of thousands of people to sign on to say, we've seen the work and we believe in what they're doing, and donors happy, and we got a little bit more money. And so it's important to have those real conversations with your donors. Don't be too scared to like actually dig in and ask them, not just why, like ask them straight up, why are you supporting us? What is it that you're looking to see out of this? Especially the bigger donors who are making up, like if they leave, you're screwed. Make sure that you're actually going to be able to keep them around. Don't like sell out to the donors per se, but make sure that you're focusing in the areas that are going to keep them around so you can keep doing what you're doing. But I can't agree more with what you were saying about like the selling of vision and the like 2-step sales cycle of not actually just having a product to sell is quite lazily and selfishly why I work in for-profit consulting and sales, because I fucking politics and nonprofit like fundraising is so much more difficult than sales. Like I can sell somebody something like, do you need this? Okay, here, have it. Give me money. That's easy. Do you believe in this thing that I'm making up in my head is a whole other hurdle that I think I've seen a few people try to get into the nonprofit space, not realizing the difference in that hurdle and thinking that their sales skills transfer over perfectly, and it does not.
Well, and I would kind of push back on it's harder. It's just different. It's a different mindset. It's very different. Like going from nonprofit to for-profit, the
harder
mindset
for me.
change.
I'll like that very subjectively. Yeah. I just don't like doing it.
Well, and a lot of people think that too. Yeah. Not just you, but a lot of people think that. And it really comes, there is a certain level of difficulty to it because you are kind of crafting this thing that people can't see yet. But there's almost like a higher level impact that comes out of it, that if you're selling a product or service and someone can say, yes, this is good or this is not for me. If you're fundraising, you're selling here's the impact I want to make on, so-and-so person. And you're giving, when you're in sales, people hear sales pitches all the time. Oh, I have a spam box full of AI trying to pitch me on, website services and all kinds of stuff, on the contact form on my website. We get pitches all the time.
Mm-hmm.
What we don't often get pitches for is pitches to change the world, pitches to make an impact, pitches to leave a legacy, pitches for people to remember that you existed after you were gone. That's not often what we get pitched on. Mm-hmm. And so you have the unique opportunity as a nonprofit fundraiser to walk in and offer someone that chance that they don't get. And I think if someone, and if you're working at a nonprofit or you're starting a nonprofit or whatever, and you don't feel like it's worth that's what you're offering them, again, quit. Don't do that. Because that is the power of nonprofits, is offering people that chance and that opportunity. And so, yeah, it's different. And in some cases might be more difficult, but my kind of counter that is in for-profits, you're trying to stand out as one among the many. In nonprofits, you are one of the few chances that person's ever going to get to change the world. You can walk in on that cloud, if you will, going into that fundraising meeting, knowing that that's all you got to do to stand out.
Yeah. So before I let you go, tell people again where they can find out more about you and Next Level Nonprofits, and get their visions up and running.
Absolutely. So thanks for having me on. Much appreciated. It's been a while since I did a podcast, so this is my my comeback to the podcasting realm.
You did great. You knocked it out of the park.
Starting with the Fight for Liberty show. So I am really excited to talk about the sustainability school that we're launching. So as I mentioned when I came on the show, I help nonprofit leaders, business professionals launch and create sustainable nonprofits. So you can go out and make the impact that you want to make on your community. And I've been doing that one-on-one for a while and primarily been doing one-on-one coaching. But I have been listening to people in my audience over the past couple of years. And what they have been telling me is, hey, would love to go one-on-one coaching, but my bank account doesn't have that many zeros. Do you have anything else that we can do? And on Tuesday, and this would be the first show I'll be talking about it on, I announced the Sustainability School. This is a group coaching program where any nonprofit leader who is running an early stage or launching an early stage nonprofit can get one-on-one effectively coaching from me once a week in a group, or one-to-many coaching from me. Can get an access to all of my trainings to walk you through the 5 phases that we just talked about, and can come out and can get access to a community of other nonprofit leaders who are serious about working on their nonprofits and creating a significant impact. So really excited about this growth of Next Level. And I'll provide a link to you, which you can drop in the chat somewhere or wherever links are sold. And and get it out. This is a private. You will not find this on my website. Either get it here or you don't. So it is a incredible thing. Really excited for it, and that's going to be launching on January 9th. But the deadline to sign up is December 15th. So if you are thinking about, hey, I sick and tired of running my nonprofit by myself. I'm burnt out. I don't have a team to support me. I don't have the funding that I need. I don't have a sustainable organization, and therefore my impact is going to be limited. Come join us at the Sustainability School. And again, I'll give David the link for that. Or I think there's a contact us on the website that you can reach out to us on there. But I'm also offering a sustainable nonprofit checklist. That is a freebie. If you want to get a little bit of an idea of what Next Level Nonprofits is about, go to nextlevelnonprofits.us, download the Sustainable Nonprofit Checklist, and it'll tell you whether you are ready to start a nonprofit and what your nonprofit needs to have to be sustainable. Thank you, David, for inviting me on to the show and being able to chat for a bit.
Yeah, hell yeah. Thanks for coming. Guys, thanks for watching. And, I talk on the show all the time that you should go out and start an org and do the thing without struggling through the hurdles of politics and party drama and all that bullshit. And this man here can help you do exactly that. So go check him out. Go sign up for the Sustainability School. This is like a really cool thing that I cannot sell you guys on nearly enough. Because also, hell yeah, it's Dan. And thank you again for watching. And we'll be back here in the next couple of weeks for we've got Jason Bassler from the Free Thought Project and Police the Police. And we're going to do a Fight Club roundtable on Trump and his cabinet picks thus far. So make sure you're following the show and the network to never miss a piece of quality content. Thanks, Dan, for coming on again. This was fucking great. You killed it.
Thank you for having me, man. And thank you, listeners, for listening in.
All right, guys. We'll catch you back here next time. Until then, keep up the fight.